Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and this time we're going to be talking about what's next for Zelda news. When are we getting the next brand new announcement for a Zelda game? There was a lot of anticipation for Zelda 35th anniversary plans this year, and as it turns out, it's looking to be fairly minimal. But it does raise a question when we will see that next big announcement. Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be early next year? And what kind of announcement will that be? That's what we're talking about today. And this time around, I am joined by Brandon from What About Nodnar. This is another one of those sort of recorded little discussions that we decided to put together while I would be on vacation. But I'll be back soon enough, and hopefully we'll be getting back to a regular schedule once that happens. But anyway, Brandon, what do you make of the Zelda situation? We haven't gotten a big Zelda 35th anniversary event. We knew about the since E3 once Nintendo just gave us like that little collector Zelda anniversary Game & Watch thing, and that's pretty much it. Like, we're not getting anything else. We just got Skyward Sword HD in July, but that seems to be the extent of actual Zelda stuff this year. What do you think is next?
It's interesting because a lot of people, we expected to see other Zelda announcements by now. We've, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, maybe Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. So there's not just, the sequel to Breath of the Wild to take into consideration here. There's other stuff that they could do that people expected them to, but now it's like, we don't know. They don't seem to be. I'm pretty sure they said they don't have any more Zelda games for the 35th anniversary coming this year. So we got to think to next year then. So will we just see, the sequel to Breath of the Wild? Will there be other Zelda games releasing next year as well, or do they space that out? It's a lot of different options, a lot of different things to think about, a lot of different angles.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one thing that a lot of people keep bringing up, well, two things: Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD.
Right.
I believe that those games are done. They've been done because they were made for Wii U. Like, these are games that came out on GameCube and also Wii. We already got the HD remasters for these games. What people are asking for is Nintendo to re-release or re-release. When do we get that? I do think we get that, right? But it's kind of a matter of when. Conceivably, maybe it's even going to happen during the Switch era, which may disappoint some people. I'm not saying it's not coming out during the Switch era. I'm just simply saying it's a possibility. I think it's just a couple of games that Nintendo has that they will sort of save in case something comes up and they have to delay something, and they slot that in there. That's what I think is sort of going down here. Nintendo wants to have some sort of major Zelda release every year, because occasionally they'll have some little things, but it'll be paired with a bigger thing, right? So for example, we're getting that sort of Zelda anniversary Game & Watch thing later, but the big thing obviously will be Skyward Sword. Last year we had the sort of DLC, I'm forgetting the name of it, that indie game.
Oh, Cadence of Hyrule?
Cadence of Hyrule, thank you. And there was a physical release. And for a while people thought that was going to be it. But no, that was a smaller thing, and we also got Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Point is, every year Nintendo's trying to put something major Zelda out there. So let's say Breath of the Wild 2, it's slated for next year. If it's delayed to 2023, then I would say, okay, maybe now Nintendo brings out Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD. They're kind of saving them for, a rainy day when they aren't able to put out the Zelda they would have wanted. So that's what I think is kind of going down with those games. I feel like you could argue, though, that, say, Breath of the Wild 2, as we argued a few days ago in a previous video, maybe that comes out holiday 2022. There's a bit of a gap between Skyward Sword HD, which came out this July, and Breath of the Wild 2. It's almost a year and a half, right? So maybe Nintendo may want to space that out a little bit and put something else Zelda-related in between. Conceivably, maybe they could put out Twilight Princess or Wind Waker HD, maybe a dual pack. They could do that. Hard to say right now, but I don't think Nintendo's in any rush to get them out. What do you think?
No, they don't. They definitely don't seem to be in any rush to get them out. Otherwise, I think they would have come out this year. It is interesting. It's like, well, if they didn't think that they needed another Zelda game when their Zelda game was Skyward Sword HD, are they gonna think they need another Zelda game next year when their Zelda games Breath of the Wild 2. Like, so I feel like maybe they don't think they need it unless, as you mentioned before, maybe Breath of the Wild sequel doesn't come out next year, but I find that kind of unlikely. You know what might be a game that's a little bit less, there's less people talking about it, but it might actually be the next Zelda game that comes out on Switch is, people have been talking about getting Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games on Switch Online, especially because a lot of people want to play, the Metroid games on those systems, since
Right.
Their Fusion's directly tied to Dread, so it seems like the perfect time to do that, and maybe we'll see some Game Boy
Minish
Zeldas
Cap.
actually. Minish Cap or
Oracle of Ages and
Oracle
Seasons.
games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those might be the big, news. The next Zelda thing to come out, perhaps.
Yeah. And that's not as major of a release, but, it could be nice if Nintendo does decide to do like a Game Boy and Game Boy Advance sort of set of legacy content, so we can get those Metroid games, and maybe also we get some of those Zelda games, right? Maybe those Zelda games come out, say sometime around February, which is the Zelda anniversary time, right? Maybe that could happen, and we see Minish Cap and Oracle of Ages Seasons come out on the eShop through Nintendo Online. That would be fine. I think a lot of people would really like that.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah, for sure.
Minish Cap's my favorite 2D Zelda, and then I haven't actually played the Oracle games, so I really want to play them because it's probably the biggest hole in my Zelda, kind of what I've played. So
I think that's not a bad bet. Like, I think that could be the next like actual Zelda game announcement sort of news, because I wouldn't be surprised if we don't even see Breath of the Wild 2 in a potential September Direct, right? Like, I think everyone kind of believes there's going to be a September Nintendo Direct. They have a Nintendo Direct every September. It's a few months after E3. They need to sort of finish conveying all their information and plans for the holidays, but then also start to give us a little bit more information about what's to come in the early part of next year. So it all makes sense. But because of that, because that's usually what they use the September Direct for, there probably aren't any sort of major Zelda plans during that period, right? The end of this year and early next year. So, maybe what happens is that all we get is an eShop announcement for Oracle of Ages and Seasons, but not like individually, but as a part of some sort of legacy content for Nintendo Online. I think that's probably a really good bet.
yeah, I think if anything Zelda's going to be announced in September Direct, it's probably that.
Yeah.
I definitely don't see them talking about Breath of the Wild 2 so soon. I feel like the earliest they could talk about it is potentially the Game Awards.
Right. Or they could
But
maybe save like maybe Prime Trilogy for that, or Prime 4. Like, it doesn't have to be Breath of the Wild 2. But I do agree that Breath of the Wild 2 is going to have a huge focus next year. So, even if we don't see it in the September Direct, like, they're going to talk about it soon. Like, I think Game Awards is actually probably fairly likely for another Breath of the Wild 2 teaser once they've gotten all of their game announcements out for this year out of the way. And even if there's not a Game Awards thing, I could see a February or a March Direct sort of confirming maybe like a holiday 2022 release with another trailer, and maybe we then get the blowout at E3, and that's how it goes. Like, I could see that being what happens, but I don't like you. I don't expect to see Breath of the Wild 2 news in a September Direct. I think the earliest we see more Breath of the Wild 2 news is at the Game Awards, which would be early December of this year.
I think the more reasonable place, other than the Game Awards, would be probably like an early year Direct to show it again. Because maybe they don't want to show it at the Game Awards because maybe they don't want to overshadow their open world Pokemon game coming out, just the next month. Maybe they want to wait till that's been released,
Good point.
Talk about it in February or March. A little bit closer to E3 too. Because, that's definitely, I think, when we're going to get the blowout. I don't even think that's really a debate, right? Like, E3 is definitely the place.
Oh, yeah. There's no way it's not there.
Yeah.
No way. Unless there's like a big global calamity.
So, if I had to bet when we'd see Breath of the Wild sequel next, I'd say February or March in a Direct. That's when if I had to bet just one place to see it next, would probably be then. Over the Game Awards, personally.
Okay, maybe. I'm not convinced that it won't be at the Game Awards, but I understand your point in relation to Legends Arceus. So maybe they show off Legends Arceus at the Game Awards, you know? Actually, that would make a lot of sense.
I think Prime Trilogy would also just be fantastic. Like finally, actually seeing
I think
Metroid at the Game Awards would be insane.
Right, and especially if Metroid Dread gets an award, like that would work out really well.
Yeah, because it's definitely going to be, you know, eligible for awards. So,
right.
Man, we're going to see Metroid at E3 or not E3,
at the Game Awards.
Game Awards. Finally.
Yeah, man. If Dread gets the boot, I would be like, if they just ignore Dread, I will be livid. But
I'd be furious.
We're talking about Zelda, so let's reel it back a little bit. So if we're not getting Breath of the Wild 2 news, you know, that's fine. I don't expect that till next year, probably, unless it's Game Awards. But there are other options, right? We have heard like rumors for say for example, like an Ocarina of Time HD or Majora's Mask HD. And I think that would be exciting. I think potentially those could be real. I don't expect them anytime soon though.
Yeah, I heard some stuff about that, and I don't remember who said it, so massive grains of salt should be taken with everything I say. But I heard from some place that there are insiders at Nintendo who say that Nintendo has been thinking about doing like what to do with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, because they want to release it on Switch, but they're not sure what they want to do with it yet. Apparently, according to these people...
Yeah, I believe that's coming from Samus Hunter.
Probably Samus Hunter, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to say a name.
Yeah, no, Samus Hunter was talking about very similar things. I think that's what you're alluding to.
Okay, probably them.
Yeah.
But, Grezzo's kind of too busy to do a full remake right now, and they're kind of debating whether or not they want to put out, like, the original version of the game or like an upscaled or slightly remastered of the 3DS version. So that seems to maybe be something that they're actively thinking about over at Nintendo. Could be.
Right. But I think what's important to note here is that if that's all the case and they're thinking about it now, that means it's not being worked on directly right now. And what's something that I think we should sort of note here is that Eiji Aonuma, the Zelda producer, was talking about Skyward Sword HD years ago for Switch. It took years, a handful of years before we actually saw it come to fruition. So if the information we're hearing about now, which is coming from Samus Hunter, maybe other places, right, that at least Samus Hunter said those things. I didn't have heard Ocarina of Time HD from other people who have sources supposedly, but like, if that's been in discussions now, that doesn't mean it's coming out this year or next year. It could be a couple years down the road. And it's not a project that will conceivably take a very long time, so who knows, we could be surprised, maybe we do see it next year, maybe we see it early 2023 or something. Like, that's a possibility. Like, I could see it come out 2023, that's not a stretch. But point is that don't expect it to be like coming out anytime soon. Like, it could, but be prepared for it to take a lot longer, right? Like, we may not see this thing happen for another 4 or 5 years. Like, we just got Skyward Sword HD. Is there a need to really put out another HD remaster for a Zelda game so soon after Skyward Sword? And there's got to be a little bit of a gap here. And let's not forget, there's also this thing called 2D Zelda. 2D Zelda is important, and we haven't gotten a brand new ground-up 2D Zelda for a while. Link's Awakening was a remake. We haven't seen a brand new 2D Zelda since A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS, and that came out 2013 or something?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Let me double check that date.
I remember getting that game at GameStop the first day it came out.
November 2013, A Link Between Worlds, and we're 2021.
2013.
So, and Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out next year, so it's not coming out. Like, the earliest we may see, we may see a 2D Zelda first before we see Ocarina of Time HD. And that might come out, say, for example, like 2023. Because if Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out next year, like, I don't see room for a 2D Zelda unless they're like, hey, let's put two new Zeldas in two different halves of the year. Like, they could do that, but I would say that's unlikely.
They would have to announce the 2D Zelda game pretty quickly too.
Yeah, I think more likely they're gonna save, even if there is a 2D Zelda that's like done, they're gonna save it until 2023 when they don't have a brand new Zelda game to come out with.
At this point, with how the timing seems to be pretty bad for an Ocarina of Time to come out, there's not really a good place for it for a pretty long time. I feel like they should just be like, okay, there's no point in if there's not a good time to put it out, there's no point in rushing it with just like a basic port or a basic like simple remaster. So we might as well take the time to just completely remake from the ground up the whole game and reimagine it and make it amazing and take as much as you want. Because
I'd be willing to just a major Zelda project, the next big major Zelda project.
Make it cool.
Yeah. I don't see that happening though. I feel like, conceivably what could happen is that, let's say, this talk of how they repurpose Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask, it ends up just being that they just take the 3DS versions, they change around a couple things, and they upscale them HD, and they put it out on Switch early next year. Like, that would be great, and I'm not saying it can't happen, right? Because keep in mind, Skyward Sword HD came out this July, like, maybe they do want to have some sort of Zelda content to sort of tide us over, because it is a year and a half, conceivably, for Breath of the Wild 2, if that does come out at the end of next year, right? So maybe we do see like an Ocarina of Time HD come out in between now and holiday next year. Maybe it's Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. Like, those are all options. Or maybe, to your point, we get simply Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games as legacy content through Nintendo Online, and that includes a few Zelda games. Like, that's a possibility. Yeah. I think all of those are valid options. If I had to place my bet, I am going to place it on the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games through Nintendo Online. But
that's what I was thinking.
Right, but throughout all of 2022, we're going to get a lot of hype and build up for Breath of the Wild 2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really much point in them doing anything major next year because they got just focus on Breath of the Wild sequel. Yeah. It's like the touchstone game. Yeah. It's like it's going to be one of the biggest games in the entire system. So just focus on that.
It's going to... Breath of the Wild 2 may end up being the greatest game of all time. Like, it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be it's the sequel to Breath of the Wild, which has more Game of the Year awards than any other game, I think. So, it's a big deal. So I think we should just be looking forward to that. Would I love to see more Zelda games? Sure, but we just got Skyward Sword HD. The other Zelda games will eventually come, but I'm not expecting any major announcements this year at all. Save for Nintendo Online stuff, as we discussed. Maybe something early next year, but if not, probably not until 2023.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but there's still plenty of Zelda stuff on the way, though, so it'll happen. But yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think. If you guys think we'll be seeing other Zelda announcements really soon, at what point, let me know in the comments below. But that's all for now, everyone. See you later. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.